Dear colleagues, today I will briefly present something to you about the topic of the medieval legend of St. George in the context of intercultural mythological context. A certain set of ancient stories were so popular, geographically widespread, and culturally meaningful in the ancient world that their archetypal narrative skeleton persisted in the collective memory until in the coming Middle Ages. These stories, which have their origin in the mythological and folklore layer of world literature, were formed into a distinctive literary tradition during the European Middle Ages under the influence of official Christian and chivalric culture. Such stories also include those that tell about one of the oldest known mythologems, the hero fight with the dragon. In the Middle Ages, this mythologems is represented by a popular hagiography about St. George. Due to the limited time of the presentation, we will focus only on the character profile, the Dragon Slayer, and in the following explanation, we will deal within the detail. The cult of St. George spread to Europe in the early Middle Ages from Byzantium. The oldest mention of this saint comes from the turn of the 5th or 6th century, and early hagiography worshipped him as a typical martyr who laid down his life in the name of Christianity. George belongs to a large group of martyrs with a militaristic orientation worshipped in Byzantium, and thus fulfills the idea of a saint who is perceived as a soldier of God. Until the 11th century, he was celebrated as an exemplary martyr and to a lesser extent as a patron of agriculture, but over time his military features began to dominate more and more. These were fully developed in the Latin West thanks to the institution of chivalry and the Crusades, and became an integral part of his character. The episode in which George kills the dragon also became popular only in the 11th century, and from this period comes the oldest record of the dragon fight motif in connection with this saint. The most famous version of the legend of St. George, in which the episode with the dragon is already a central motif, undoubtedly comes from the collection of hagiographic legends Legenda Aurea, or Golden Legend, by the Italian Dominican monk Jacopo de Voragino, which was written in the 60s of the 13th century. In the archaic text of traditionally established societies, the dragon slayer is of the divine or semi-divine origin. In these stories, which belongs to the oldest text recording the ancient mythologems of the fight with the dragon slayer has distinctive feature of unanistic, that is, heavenly beings, with which associate the concept of omnipotence and fertility and the control of celestial natural phenomena. In our text sample of material, we record two basic types of dragon slayer with Uranistic feature, either with dominating atmospheric or solar essence. In the role of the first type of dragon slayer are gods connected with atmospheric phenomena, most often with rain, storm, or wind. In the Indo-European area, the gods of the atmospheric type are represented as divine slayer of the serpentomorphic monster, as the Olympian Zeus kills the towering serpent monster Typhon. His Slavic and equivalent Perun neutralizes the spiteful god Veles in the form of a dragon. The North Germanic god of thunder Thor kills the sea serpent Jormungand. Their Vedic Hindu doublet is the warrior god of rain and storm Indra, the slayer of the serpent Vritra, the embodiment of Dro. The weapons of this divine dragon slayer are mainly lightning, thunderhammer, mace, or sword. If we were to use Dumézil's theory of the three-functional Indo-European ideology, we can classify all dragon slayers from this cultural area into the second function to the so-called warrior status. An inherent part of this second warrior status is also the military aristocracy, including the ruling royal line, which is the guarantor, lawgiver of order and ensures stability within society. This Indo-European atmospheric gods dragon slayers appears in the structures of Indo-European religions not only as warriors, but also as king, or king of the gods, or humanity, or the world. At the same time, the affinity role of the father fertilizer overlaps with the social religious function of the warrior, who can even reach the status of a king. God's dragon slayer, showing continuity with fertile atmospheric phenomena, are usually the highest god king's father as Zeus or Perun, or they are direct successors of the highest deities as Thor or Indra. A similar semantic formula in which the dragon slayer appears as a god king warrior with atmospheric religious functional features is not only valid for the Indo-European cultural linguistic area, but also algorithmically appears in other parts of the world. In the role of the second type of dragon slayer are gods or the semi-gods, cultural heroes of the sun, who are often a direct representation of this radial celestial body, such as the Greek Apollo killing the serpent Python, or the Egyptian Ra killing the chaos serpent Apopa, or these are generally gods of the light and clear reason or wisdom, such as Akkadian Babylonian Marduk, destroying the sea monster Tiamat and the beginning the ages. In their essence, these solar mythical beings metamorphically embody the sun and its cosmic path. Light and solar deities or the semi-gods cultural heroes that undergo the so-called the solar initiation journey when their adventures imitate in the metamorphic code of the myth, the journey of the sun across the sky, which in different time cycles passes from the heavenly highest of the illuminated sky to the zenith of the western world, that is the realm of the dead or underworld, where is it swallowed by a chthonic monster, or it fight with it in a fierce life and death struggle so that it can be restored again in full force at the point of the east. This idea also corresponds to a frequent mythical or fairy tale motif that explains solar eclipse, a cosmic catastrophe, by the fact that a voracious dragon snake swallowed this celestial body. So, for example, the Mayan sun god Itzama, who is also considered the supreme ruler of the universe and the creator of the world, according to the cosmogonic myth, is climbs out of the serpentine muzzle of a two-headed caiman, which symbolizes his absorption by the chthonic primordial monster, but also his victory over it, his individual rebirth. Egyptian mythology also personifies the fatal sacred path of the sun in a similar way. A passage from the Book of the Dead describes the idea that the solar deity Ra sails every night on a solar barge with his retinue across the underworld, where he has to overcome life-threatening obstacles, including a clash with the cosmic serpent Apop, a representative of absorbing darkness and chaos, which he successfully eliminates. In medieval discourse, the image of the original mythical dragon slayer is of course modified, but certain of its characteristic essential features remain unchanged. With the emergence and legalization of Christianity in the first centuries of our era, a completely new type of dragon slayer gradually and very subtly takes shape, which will gain its popularity especially in the High Middle Ages. In the New Testament biblical text following example of the Old Testament Yahweh who fights with Leviathan, the Archangel Michael first gets into a similar conflict with the serpent dragon, in fact the devil. Later he is followed by various saints or martyrs led by Saint George. In parallel with the dragon slayers from chivalric epics and novels, which we will not address now for reason of time, especially in the High Middle Ages, hagiography about Saint Dragon Slayer does not lose its attractiveness. The saints, following the example of Saint George, is perceived as God's warrior or knight, while his fight with the dragon monster, the devil incarnate, becomes a particularly inspiring and topical motif in European bishoprics and parishes. In these stories, the dragon slayer semantic value in terms of his origin is somewhere in between. As a saint, he is no longer just an ordinary man, but he is not quite a divine being either, although his miraculous deeds, martyrdom, and the resurrection provide him with a certain degree of deification. The Church knows up to 60 legends about saints who include the defeat of dragon monster among their miracles, most often by means of a sword, spear, raising a crucifix, making the sign of the cross or prayer. This motif exists in different versions, but the axiological appeal supporting Christian values and the basic character configuration is always preserved. The saint is a hero, a representative of God and Christ, also good, and a dragon as a pest, a representative of the devil, evil, stands opposite him. Only Golden Legend in itself offers several variants of the story of the Saint George, for example, Saint Margaret, Saint Matthew, Saint Philip, Saint Sylvester, or Saint Donatus fight with the dragon devil. Archangel Michael from the Christian mythology of the New Testament, as well as saints from hagiography, legends presenting themselves as dragon slayers, are particular examples of Uranistic heroes with the strong solar features. However, even in this context, the dragon snake representing the devil himself remains the embodiment of chaos, engulfing darkness and death. Archangel Michael and also saints defend God and act directly in his name. They often ask God to lend them his strength in the fight with the dragon, so they are his representative. The Christian God as the absolute ruler of the world and the heavens, the Father of all creation, he is God creator, fulfills the features of the Uranistic deity. Moreover, under the influence of Christian philosophy, his solar feature also significantly dominate. However, Christ, forming a union with God the Father, also has distinct solar features. Moreover, he also undergoes a typically solar initiation path when he is killed, buried, or absorbed in a dark grave in cave, but finally rises triumphantly from the dead and ascends to the heavenly highest. In addition, in many iconographies, he is depicted with a halo, which symbolizes transcendent transformation and resurrection, a return to the light. In addition, the solar element in the form of a bright halo is also traditionally depicted in Christian iconography by Saint and the Archangel Michael also. As for the specific personality of St. George, we cannot neglect its connection with agriculture and the spring holidays of the renewal of vegetation and fertility, which gradually became an important part of the Christian calendar year, especially in the folklore layer. In connection with these religious magical functions, which are in Christianized folklore explicitly associated with St. George, he has also atmospheric attributes. In conclusion, we can at least briefly state that Christianity took over the ancient arch mythologies of the hero's fight with the dragon and incorporated into its theological concept. Although this mythology has understandably undergone some updating and assimilation towards Christian ideas and values, deep in its core, its semantic remained the same even across the millennia. It represented the ancient archetypal idea of the contrasting arch-categories of good, evil, order, and chaos, which are in constant tension, personified on the figural axis by the figure of an all-powerful and valiant dragon slayer, a celestial being guaranteeing order in the universe, and a menacing serpentomorphic chthonic monster personifying the absorbing, disturbing, and dark aspect of the world, chaos and death. Dear colleagues, thank you for your attention. I hope you found the presentation interesting, and I wish you a pleasant rest of the conference. Goodbye.